Welcome to The Reporter with your host, Ricey Ryder. The following is an interview with director and film student MuyMuy Gregorio. MuyMuy is a student at Western Washington University, whom I have met through Filipino American Student Association, or FASA. We share a great love for being Filipino, and he shares actually a lot of his work, which regards immigration, and more specifically, the experience an immigrant faces while coming to America. His latest short film, still in production, called Lenora, is a short horror film based upon migrant exploitation and the absurdities that come along with it. Most people were born from immigrants or knew an immigrant, like coming to America. Additionally, Moy Moy is a critic of the United States, as well as its long-running white supremacist ideology that really seems to poke its head in today's world. He's a steward of film, um, great consumer of media, just as Devin Green before me was, and my guest thereafter. And he believes in the power of storytelling. Um, like he believes in the influence of the media, and I'm sure we all do. Ever since Moy started making videos or short films, they've all been about the immigration experience, dating back to some of his first vlogs or his first short form videos. He would take characters off from GTA 4 and record the NPCs doing whatever and splice clips together to give you a slice of the immigrant experience. This is my first interview with Moy Moy, and it won't be our last. Um, we're, we're very much looking forward to producing a second one. As always, make sure to like, share, and subscribe, and enjoy our first interview. It won't be the last.
For
Thank you.
like a broader context, can you speak about what your film series is about?
Yeah, I'd say the Isang trilogy, it's pretty much the foundation of it is actually a chant developed by the farm workers union strikes, I think early 20th century California with, I think it's either the farm worker strikes or the Delano grape strikes, but
I think
regardless.
you got it right with the farmer strikes. It coincided at the time with Cesar Chavez.
Yeah, that's the crazy part. It's like there's Cesar Chavez, and then there's also Larry Itlong, who was a fairly prominent organizer. And I think he came from I forgot what it's called, but it was a generation of Filipino OFWs that immigrated from the Philippines to work, pretty much for better opportunities. And yeah, here are migrants all across the world that are fighting for their own well-being as well as just an opportunity to live. Their organizing was through these chants. They didn't say specifically Isang Dugo, Isang Pamilya, but they did say Isang Bagsak, and they would lead it up with like a clapping similar to a heartbeat, which is probably where Isang Dugo came from. And then at the crescendo, pretty much say Isang Bagsak, and then boom. And that's pretty much what we've been doing. I've been a part of Bufasa, and that's like our closing chant to kind of, I guess, like tie a ribbon on the community that we created within that day. And I wanted to make a movie that both honored that and also dissected it. Because I feel like the kind of media that is assigned to Filipino culture, especially ones that are popular in American pop culture, there's one called like The Debut, which was also a Filipino-American filmmaker. Yeah, there's Filipinos everywhere, but there hasn't been one that's been like critical about our role in this country, as well as just like our identity, without it steering into comedy or even status quo, I'd say. So I just wanted to make like a series of films that pretty much like provide as much critical analysis of our history with colonialism, from Spain to Japan to America, and also just like honor our cultural cachet, especially with how collectively oriented we are in our joys and in our pains and all that stuff, and also in our stresses. And then I also want to make a film that kind of captures where we are today, how all of those things apply to the Filipino-American identity, essentially.
I think that's I mean, that's beautiful, especially capturing a niche that needs the representation, Filipino people. And like you said, there's a lot of Filipinos either in the industry or industry adjacent. My girlfriend on her Filipino side had an uncle that worked on the Green Mile, but you don't hear about him unless you see some really Filipino-looking ass name in the credits.
Exactly. I feel like we've been on the sidelines.
There's I could totally speak to Filipino identity, you know. I mean, it's something in this country where it's like Filipinos exist, but maybe they're on the lower class, but maybe they're not because they work in the medical field. And I feel like the medical field is honestly one of the biggest ways we are perceived by the public. But that's also easy for me to say because my mom is in OFW herself doing senior living care at a nursing home right now.
Yeah, that's the one thing I was very hesitant in when I was making movies about Filipinos or being Filipino, was like, you'd expect it to be easier with the stereotypes. But in reality, as well as any other marginalized country, especially ones that are affected by colonialism and imperialism, is that there is an infinite combination of our experiences. It was very hard for me because I was born in Manila, and I was in the Philippines till I was 5, and then we immigrated to the States because my dad, and like your mom, right, is familiarized themselves with the medical field, right? He wasn't essentially a nurse or a doctor. He was literally custodial. In my head, I'm like, I guess that fits within the stereotype.
Yeah.
Kind
right.
of. But because he was constantly working, I never really had the chance to thoroughly explore that, especially with a figure that'll guide me through that. I had to figure that out. I think the second I got to Western, actually. And by this time, I lost my fluency in Tagalog. I could understand it. And I realized that we've been constantly,
thrown to the background?
Yeah, exactly.
Something else, but...
Exactly.
Yeah,
it's kind of been melting potted, I guess.
Yeah, and it's kind of like the Filipinos have been melted on because similar experience before my mom did live-in care. When I actually lived with her, she did the exact same thing. She did custodial at Evergreen Hospital. She worked at Evergreen Hospital and she worked nights. And that's how she familiarized herself to the U.S. And like you said, immigrant culture is a hell of a thing because, like you said, there's an infinite number of combinations of identities that every story is going to be different. And you could totally see just the struggle that goes through an immigrant's everyday life, because for an immigrant who is not familiar with the territory or the culture, life can't really open up the same way it does for a typical, American-born or, American understanding person. For an immigrant, from what I've seen in personal experience, it's just work, work, work until you get to go back home. And then you get back and you keep working. And that's what the trend has been, at least in my family. I totally agree. And I think that your projects are going to be a powerful message to not only Filipinos, but immigrant families and immigrant experiences. Have you seen, Fresh Off the Boat? It's like a sitcom.
Yeah, I grew up on that.
About a bunch of, I believe they're Chinese immigrants coming to America.
Yeah.
And it's easy to show immigrants in a cushy light where, it's like, oh, the parents have super big brains, so they get good paying jobs in the U.S. and, everyone gets to be fine, and you get the typical sort of problems that come with being an American family. But, that's not often what it feels like.
Yeah, I mean, that's the main, issue that I've faced with growing up in America is I would consume all sorts of media regarding immigrants, and the through line with them is that it's working class depiction that definitely strips away the nuances of, I think, our respective cultures, values and also issues. And if they do show the issues, they sensationalize it, I'd say. I think that's also why, I have 1.5 Like I'm making 2 horror movies so far, but my heart is truly in melodramas and also just dramas. I'd say domestic dramas, because there's so much nuance that goes into Filipino families, especially with how we communicate and also with the decisions we make as a family, that is honestly reflective of our history being colonized and being, part of, I guess, like the ongoing struggles that we have to face here in the States and also back in the Philippines. This year has been fairly interesting because I made Isang to go, or at least like I conceptualized it like 3 years ago. And that was my foray into like the Philippine-American War, Spanish colonialism, also resistances by the Filipino people in those institutions and in those systems of oppression. It's only until this year where I realized, like, not only is it ongoing, especially with the increasing militarization of the Philippines, but also the struggles are universal, is what I'm trying to say. Like, it's not just the Philippines that are going through these situations, although it's how do I say,
I mean, it's about
distinct.
Filipinos because that's what you're tied to, and it makes sense. The best creators make stuff related to their own personal experience, so it makes sense.
Yeah, that's the interesting part, though. I find that great art is in a weird horseshoe way can be very, very specific, but still manages to be universal. I think the most obvious example, and is probably one of my American heroes, which is a few filmmakers, is like Martin Scorsese. He makes films that are very distinct to the Italian-American diaspora and also mobsters and crime and stuff, but he manages to find, like, in these characters' despair and also their toxic masculinity, he manages to find, I guess, like, through their downfalls, way to create a statement that reflects, I guess, like a humanist critique or depiction of these characters, and manages to get everybody thinking for themselves by the end of the film, I'd say.
It's really interesting, and being a Filipino Scorsese would be amazing. I mean, just like, it's telling a story about your culture, about your entire culture, from start to finish, all the good and all the bad and all the ugly.
It's interesting. I would say Scorsese has like grown on me, but my first love, I think, if we're talking American filmmakers that I do look up to, actually I'd say two first loves. It's Spike Lee and Jordan Peele. Those are the 2 filmmakers I absolutely revere, and also what brought me into studying directors and also their voices. They are they've had an interesting career path, a career trajectory, especially Spike Lee. I think the philosophy of just like, they make something so specific to the point where it is universal, where everybody's involved. Although I fell in love with film with Parasite, by Bong Joon-ho, I think the one that got me more energized and also something that I refer back to is Malcolm X by Spike Lee. I think that is a film that I suggest everybody to go watch, and also I watch at least once a year.
How far in the production process are you with the Isang trilogy, and where have you been submitting these places for festival?
For Isang to Go, it's mainly like Filipino or Asian film festivals or even horror film festivals. And then Isang Pamilya is still in post-production. I do have to get like a few shots in and also a bit of it color graded. And I'm actually making a film this fall that I'm definitely going to submit everywhere I can. It's pretty much I'm pretty much righting the wrongs I did with Isang to Go's production and turning it into like, I don't know, I just want to improve. That's kind of where I'm at with my career. It's called Lenora. Have I ever told you about that?
I believe Devin's told me about that because I found it somehow. It's on my show notes.
Oh, sweet. Yeah, that's a project I'm very proud of, and probably like I'm trying to make it the most politically potent and also the most accessible. That is going to be submitted, the usual places. But the one festival I do really want it to receive, like, at least some recognition is Bleeding Ham. Like, as much as I'd love for my films to be at, like, Sundance or Toronto or SIFF or Seattle International, I think I'm just slowly gathering my voice as well. It's just, like, my process to get to that point. My professor actually recently brought up how I should look into some Sundance programs because he knows how many ideas and like, I'm in that process of trying to figure out like, I guess like how to get funding, how to get the crew, how to get the equipment, how to work with a budget. He suggested to look into like some Sundance programs, and I was like, oh, that's probably going to be my step post-grad or maybe even nearing graduation because I like to think ahead.
Is that like a film program?
Yeah, I think so. It offers a variety from what I research. One's like for feature-length filmmaking, I think both documentary and both fiction. And then there's some that are like how to figure out like grant writing or just funding, essentially. The one that we recommended me was like, I think a program on production, like how to be a producer and all that stuff. And the ins and outs of just like how to create like a smooth production process as, regardless of the role. That's kind of where I'm at with my career is just like I want to learn the ins and outs, cover my bases, and just like continue learning because of my experience, especially like being Filipino and also just like being a migrant. Yeah, and even outside of the identities or communities I'm a part of, it's like I find inspiration literally everywhere. So the only thing I gotta focus on personally is just how do I express those, or how do I put those on paper in front of a screen, essentially.
It takes a lot of courage to be an artist, period, because, it takes dedication and it takes a lot of independence, like what you're seeing right now. Even though, you're in film groups and you're doing this and that, it's still about number one, it's still about yourself and about self-journey. That's something I've been going through myself, because it's like, where do I want to go after this? Like, do I want to do this podcast more? Do I want to write more? Yeah, currently it's looking like, I don't even know, dude. Yeah, I'm just looking for an internship, I guess probably after the spring, something like that.
It's a scary world. I chose the worst career path to have like a structure, but I feel like I work pretty well under pressure and also just like riffing, I guess, personally.
And something I really do kind of want to dig into is how, you want to do movie producing, but dude, teach me, a complete layperson, how do you produce a feature-length film? Because the whole process of it seems like almost impossible to me. Like starting with like logistics and personnel-wise, like what goes down in the movie room?
From my experience, because I have yet to make my own feature length, I do want Isang to be as long as it can be, as well as Lenora. Low key, from what I'm picking up, it all starts in pre-production. Just like gathering all the resources you can, whether it's props, locations, connections, especially having somebody that'll organize a space or even a group of people. Actors are still bunched into that, like who's going to be available, who's going to be the most aligned with your vision. You kind of do all of that either in your head, at least within this level of filmmaking. I kind of just like, I don't know, I go through life and I'm like, this good friend would be a great character actor. I'm trying to get Devin to act in one of my films because I see him within this character I've been writing that he can personally relate with, and also we've spent a good chunk of our time together just like discussing and exploring, because it's interesting. I guess this is a bit of a tangent, but just like personally, I love character studies, I'd say. And there's so many characters you meet throughout life, and there's so many characters that I meet within the Filipino community, or just BIPOC communities in general, that haven't had the time to genuinely like break down what makes them them. And that could be applied to anybody, but I think what interests me the most are characters that, interpret love in very familiar yet radical ways. Like for Isang, right? RJ's character is so obsessed with the idea of making a movie that inadvertently is probably the most like fucked up piece of media, and it leads them down a path of anxiety and dread, and also like almost their death. And then there's another character, their sibling, that is so avoidant of love that the second that they meet somebody that they gave it to, they're very much hesitant or completely, or almost, I'd say, hypnotized by it. And then, Isang Pamilya too. You have friends and siblings that love each other, but because they're so fixated on looking for Bruno Mars. It's like they're about to butt heads. It's like, yeah, that's pretty much one of many of my fixations on like what brings me to sit down and write a script, because that's also ultimately one of the most important parts that comes with the production, is just knowing what story you're trying to make and all the moving parts that go into it. I come from the school of writer-director filmmakers, I'd say. Those are the filmmakers I grew up studying and also continue to study. But that's not, the crazy part is like, that's not the one way or one path you have to go. There's so many filmmakers that start off as audio or cinematography or even lighting that end up creating a project or even a very successful film. But for me, I think what's important is just like taking a look around me, or I spend a lot of time observing, I'll say, and just trying to find like the root of like, I don't know, I'm just trying to make sense of everything essally. And there's some people in the world that kind of like,
in a way that makes sense
there's
to
some
your
people
brain.
in the world, exactly, and they go throughout lives, or they go throughout their life trying to like shape it in their image, but inadvertently makes the world a worser place or even a better place. That's kind of like the bread and butter for most of my storytelling, I'd say.
And it's brilliant too, because you try to shape the world, but then the world inevitably is going to shape you as well, and it's up to you and your principles as to how you're going to treat something like that. So
exactly,
I mean,
that's pretty much like the gold mine of just any interesting story, I'd say.
absolutely. I mean, don't they preach two things about film, like its plot and its characters? And then, yeah, characters especially. Something I've had difficulty with when I do fiction writing is actually, you know, building these incredibly niche or complex characters, just because it's like, you know, it's scary. I mean, I think it's scary just because it really makes you think about a person, and it really makes you really have to go into someone else's shoes in order to truly create a fantastic character. You know, so I think my biggest deterrence when it comes to like character writing is just the anxiety that comes from, you know, what if this person is totally outlandish or ridiculous, or doesn't make any sense even in this sort of avant-garde way. So,
you know what's interesting? I find most recently, because I've been listening to a lot of Outkast. Like I went back because I got like a CD for Speaker Box Love Below, and then I went back and listened to like Southern Playlistic, and then, you know, a whole deep dive. And I find that a lot of their writing and what makes them a very timeless duo is, their writing is very much, it both taps into the feeling and the sonics, but also it's very reminiscent of how Funkadelic made their name. It's, they do creatively world build by utilizing concepts and turning them into a person or even a they either create some psychedelic image of, say, America, or even a woman, or even rap as a whole. Outkast does a great job of just like keeping you on your toes to go through this whole synthesis of just like musical prowess, and also just like getting deep down like what it means to be black in America. And I think for me, and also the filmmakers I look up to, is they have been around enough or they keep in touch with a community so much that they don't speak for them, but they allow themselves, they find a way to speak for themselves within this community, I'd say. There's a filmmaker, two of them actually, Lino Broca from the second golden age of Philippine cinema, I'd say, or the third. Absolute GOAT. I love him to death. He's probably one of my heroes. I watched most of the films I've seen by him. Phenomenal. No misses. Bro's like the Michael Jordan of Filipino filmmaking. And the way he does it is like, he creates these fairly simple plots, but the characters that he throws these situations in react accordingly to the anxieties of the Philippine people, the hopes of the Philippine people, the angers. And you only get that by stepping outside of your own box, or, you know, your own ego, or going deep within it, which takes me to, I guess there's three filmmakers that I look up to. I was gonna bring up this filmmaker that I love but also hate at the same time, and that would be Paul Thomas Anderson, who's a American filmmaker. He manages to make films that apply to universal morals and also ideas, but at the same time, I'm like, damn, this is really how you see people. Like, it's not because I hate him for being pessimistic, but he doesn't, it takes a minute for me to be like, besides, that worldview that you're kind of creating with the situations you write up creatively too. That's what makes them very hard to not love, is just like, bro thinks of the craziest things and it works. It's just like, I have to take a step back and I'm like, damn, you're really, when you write, you put yourself on the paper. This is really you? Like, it makes me think a little. But yeah, no, the third filmmaker that I always look, I've been slowly studying. His media is very hard to find, and he's actually a filmmaker that I know for a fact I'm going to love and try to like study even more over time, is Charles Burnett. He was a phenomenal, I guess, artist first and foremost, and he inadvertently became one of the best documentarians when it comes to the working class, especially in Watts, and also of the black community. And watching, he has his most prolific film is Killer of Sheep. He made that while he was in school, I believe. It took him a few years to edit, and it still stands. I think it was like 70, how do I say? Is it 70 or 80? Very phenomenal film, very simple, but he manages to capture these images that reflect, just the poignancy and also the tenderness that comes with living. I'd say he managed to transcend the conditions without hiding from them. All because, I think he just managed to write a script that's so specific, but also very universal.
I get that. Making something that is singular, like, yet universal. Every movie has its different mode, but would you say that like your film's role in your specific community, would you say that plays into like the marketing aspect of everything? Like, how has marketing gone in trying to market a film?
That's one of the things I am part conscious of and also partly dread, because you don't reach that equilibrium on your first go, I'd say. Sometimes filmmakers, even when they're in veteran status, create films that are so specific or individualized to the point where it's like, oh damn, is this just for you?
Like they don't have that sort of universal beat to it. Exactly.
And when it comes to me and the image that, or the films I'm trying to produce and the art I'm trying to create, it's like, personally, it takes a village and also a company to kind of create that, but for me, it's
no
like,
kidding.
I don't want to separate myself from the community whatsoever. I don't want to speak for them, but I do want to show that we're not just a monolith, That's kind of my intention with making the Isang trilogy, and also just like whatever personal projects I create. I want to express the shades of the Filipino American experience and also just the migrant experience, because that's like has been so stereotyped and also like reduced over time because of certain American historical events.
I mean, also you think of like reducing like a group of people to like the barest of things. You just look at social media, because it'll absolutely do that to anybody and everybody.
Oh yeah. Oh my god, yeah. That's one of these days, if I ever turn into a film scholar, I do want to write like a 20-page paper on Jokoi, or even like I don't know if it's the right word, but just the ubiquity of the Filipino American experience. Like, there's so many Filipinos out there, but why are we still considered like accents of the country? We're still on the outskirts of all of it, and that's definitely one thing I like always want to highlight with my films. I don't know. The first person, and also that comes to mind, and also just the litmus test for it, is Bruno Mars. He is everybody's favorite. I fuck with his music. Oh, am I allowed to swear?
Yeah, you can. I mean, it is what it is.
Okay.
Yeah, you're good.
I absolutely adore his music, his albums, his contributions to pop culture. But I don't know. He has the ability to turn on and off whether he's for Filipino or not. Because he fits with it. I mean, phenotypically, right? Filipinos, I mean, personally too, from my experience, like, we can be culturally ambiguous sometimes.
Very much so. It's a big part of Filipino identity, like immigrant experience, you know, being Filipino in a foreign place, not being able to be identified as such. You know?
Exactly. But it's crazy because, like, we still share the same history. We still share the same country of origin.
Yeah.
It's just like, we haven't had a celebrity or somebody of the upper class. Not that we have to wait on somebody like that to kind of define that, you know, or to kind of represent
truly
that.
embrace the culture as well. Because Olivia Rodrigo, she was just like, I'm Filipino, guys. And then that was pretty much it for like her whole like finding her Filipino identity.
And we eat that shit up though. We eat that shit up.
I mean,
I love that.
People, Filipinos will love that. I love it too, but it's you know, it's very surface level compared to, you know, what you want to speak on about your community and stuff like that. So it's very interesting contrast.
And I think also, speaking of contrasts, that is the bread and butter for most of my explorations or anything I write. Because I feel like not only is it just like, you know, it makes shit interesting, like peanut butter and jelly or something, but it also highlights in between and whatever you create, and also asks the audience, like, where do you stand, essentially. That's why I feel like for Isang to go, right, the organization that is pretty much explored in that share the same name, whether it's different between the countries, right? In one place it's considered literally the revolutionary group that fought for the independence of a people, while the other continues to oppress through violent means. I think you could apply and like examine the world through that lens. I could do verbal gymnastics fairly decently. It's pretty ironic because it's like Tagalog was my first language, but then I just got super, they taught me English before I even immigrated here. So it's like, part of me, I'm like, okay, thanks mom and dad, it paid off, but also like, damn, I can't speak anything else. So it's
It must be even more brutal if you live there, because I never lived there, and now my mom she barely speaks English anymore, so it's kind of like the inverse of you. It's like, how do I even fucking talk to you, mom? All right.
No, my parents are the same way. I go home and they just speak in like maybe Taglish, but also just like my dad. He will speak in English, but just use words, like not even a sentence. He'll use specific words to kind of express himself, and I'm like, I'm impressed every time I come back home, because I'm like, damn, I get what you mean. How did you do that so efficiently?
Yeah, and that speaks on fucking like how smart bilingual people actually are, because you have to fit a square peg in a round hole if you're gonna speak in Taglish or in any mix of two languages. So it's pretty impressive.
Yeah,
dude.
That's also I was just gonna tie it back to filmmaking, and I actually have my older sister translate for me, because I write Filipino characters, and I do want to create Filipinos that can't speak Tagalog, because that's the reality of it. English is pretty much like, and Tagalog, mainly English, is like the lingua franca of the Philippines. They prioritize that language over Tagalog and also any other dialects in the country. And in a way, depicting that reality is both, it highlights my hyperfixation on colonialism, but also just presents these characters that are in that reality, someone that anybody that knows English can relate to. One of my intentions.
I got you. And this is, I guess, this is the question I had in my back pocket. I was wondering about like Gaze Films. So obviously you play a part within their organization. I kind of want to know like how is the organizational structure? Like, do you guys help out on each other's productions? Is there specific roles within the group, stuff like that? Like how it's set up and what you do in that organization.
Yeah, that organization or production company was started by my friends Troy and Kieran Parnell, and we pretty much, I don't think we have like a mission statement, but we're pretty much just like a film collective and also production company based in Bellingham. That's pretty much our connecting tissue. It's Troy handles most of my like technical stuff, and Kieran is like the CFO, I believe, and they handle like monetary logistics, especially when it comes to like managing an LLC. And for me, low-key, I'm still in school, so I have an excuse. I just kind of like make stuff. I try to help out when I can, because I'm also the leader of Film Production Club, which is also like the meeting I'm gonna start in 30 minutes, so we have a bit of time.
Oh shoot! I didn't realize you were leading it, dude. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Crazy.
I've been on the board since my first year at Western. Started as like a co-officer. It restarted the year I got to Western because of COVID. The old organization didn't really give us anything, and probably because like numbers probably dwindled during COVID. So we kind of started from scratch. My experience with that has been fairly reflective of my character, or just who I am as a person. I wasn't really aware or even concerned about the fact that I'm studying at a predominantly white institution. I moved up here with...
Was it kind of like a shocker when you joined the club and you saw the faces?
Not really, actually. That's the crazy part. I was like, there was one other Filipino. I was just like, oh, okay, cool, let's do this. Dab each other up, all that stuff. But they left like instantly. I don't know what. I was just left there with my own devices. And I still persisted. I helped out with productions. I have this, but there was one, I think what kind of like opened my eyes, because I also moved up there with my white friends, right? Which, totally not a coincidence that it was mainly my white friends that were able to go to second education, or higher education. But there was this one instance, it was my first film shoot. This is pretty much what makes me me to an extent.
Ever, or like professionally, semi-professionally? Ever. Okay.
This was my first film shoot, and I just remember riding to, I forgot what it was. It was like Chuckanut Drive. There was a trail that we were going to film at that goes down to a beach. One of the lead actors, and this was on MLK Day, and there was free parking for the trails and the parks and all that stuff. One of the lead actors was like, why do we have a day for this guy? Like, didn't he cheat on his wife? And I just remembered, like, sitting there in the car, I was just like, okay, like, I'm pretty sure he did more than that,
I mean, that's kind of more of like a men issue than like an MLK issue.
Exactly. And then when we got to the beach, he started making these politically incorrect jokes. Growing up with, like, men and gamers especially, right, you'd expect my brain to be like, haha, not funny, whatever. But I realized, like, oh wait, this guy is not only my lead actor, he is also like in charge of on the board of like clubs on campus. This guy holds a position. And I was just like, okay, well, if he's going to have an issue with like people of color, and also just like, people in like, yeah, especially people of color, just like people in general too. I don't know, that was like, it just started building up in my stomach. And then over the years, it was just like, wait, that's literally what like centuries of imperialism and colonialism, and I kind of linked it back to my Filipino identity. There's a reason why people think like that. And I think one of my fixations and what I'm trying to like explore in my work especially is how people use humor to shield them from or to justify bigotry, essentially. There was also a bit with that actor where there was BIPOC View Voices. It was like an Instagram page that was kind of like a separate account from WW Voices, and he just expressed like concern and resentment towards the fact that there is a BIPOC WW voice. And I was just like, why do you care?
It doesn't concern you, so why does it matter so much to you?
But what scared me is like, because he feels like he was a part of it, he has the chance to shut it down or act on it, and he has the power to do so. And I think that's kind of what like rewired my brain ever since then, is like, these are people in power. Are we really going to let them decide for us if they don't really see us as human? And that pretty much drew me to a path of creating films that not only like highlight Filipino identity, but also just like the through line that kind of brings all marginalized communities together, especially in America.
Which is like hate. Seeing something like that in your first ever shoot has to be a super powerful experience because, you know, it's your first time. Were you directing this? So you were
No,
directing.
I think I was just a script supervisor. I was just like part of the crew, like
Yeah.
getting shit done.
You're on the film crew, you're on work, and you see this guy who has organizational power, not just power as the lead actor. And yeah, dude, something like that, like you expect to see hate among poor, uneducated folk, and that's kind of like historically like what it's been. But then you see, I mean, it must be crazy, and it gives a lot of insight about Isang Dugo and about, you know, how you perceive positions of power and stuff like that. It's super interesting.
It's definitely, it feels so explicit, or it feels very obvious that abuses of power occur when they occur and who perpetrates them. But what I find very interesting in American society, from my experience, is that because you probably obtained this position of power through your privileges, whether it's class, you know, like financial, even racial too, we are still they don't get punished for it. That's the crazy part. People would say we need to, you know, that's not how things could go. You know, morality is kind of like overthrown by capital, but it's up to the people to kind of point those things out and act on it. I think that's also like one of the things I want to highlight. I mean, the works I have so far, and also the works I'm pursuing is like the people free themselves. Right? We have to be, you know, we have to live this life together. It's the people that you live with or just like go to class with. We're all either contribute to this system or, you know, we support each other. And sometimes privilege can even like blind us from that.
Yeah, and something I saw a lot at Western is being blinded by your privilege, because I'm sure you can speak to it too, that there is a lot of wealth concentrated inside of universities. It's a crazy spectacle to see, honestly, coming from me, a guy who's lived personally, like, I'd say lower middle class to a middle class life for his whole life. We took out a student loan just to go to college, or private loan. You know, just comparing my economic situation to how I perceive the economic situation of others, either on grant funding or who are on their trust fund. It is so wild, because it seems like some people just don't have a great concept of wealth, understanding class differences and stuff like that. Eventually I'm gonna write something about that, like just wealth concentration in universities, because universities are something that are supposed to be like portrayed as like for everybody, or it's like, you know, if you're smart enough you can get a degree, but you know, it's often not that way, because it's just so damn expensive, especially for like to get a 4-year degree, just because you usually have to do at least 1 year university, stuff like that, usually at least 2 years. And then, you know, I go to community college now, and you look at everyone around me, it's such a diverse mix of people. Like, I have someone in my journalism class this quarter who he's spent like 5 years in the military. He's been in the press for like 5+ years, but he's taking this 101 class to get a piece of paper. So
yeah,
like one thing about
it's definitely
community college,
a business.
in community college there's a lot more heterogeneity, where it's like differences in people, or like different people in different situations. Compared to university, it's mostly younger students, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's definitely a balance, but also like, yeah, definitely a double-edged sword, because yeah, universities are essentially a business, right? That's why we have to pay an exorbitant, like, crap ton of money for tuition, or even just to get food or to live on campus. But it's also, I think, what kind of rings true when it comes to just education in general. It's like what you put into it. I think it took a while for me to realize like what buttons to press to get what you want. But when it comes to filmmaking, right, and I think this is also why I subscribe to like the writer-director role, and also just like my appreciation for the media, is that, or an appreciation for the medium is like you make that path essentially. Years down the line, people are gonna look back, and I'm gonna look back. It's like, from the start, these are the films I created or he created. These are the messages that he's been trying to say, and the images that he created. That as long as we don't go off the grid, that's pretty much what's going to define our individual careers. And even outside of filmmaking, if you just pay tuition and kind of go to classes to get a grade, it's like you're not going to develop that network or even just like the opportunities that are that present themselves to you. In a fucked up way, that was kind of what that first shoot kind of taught me. It's like bigotry and its nuances they have to come from somewhere,
Exactly.
It's not taught in schools, but it's definitely, it can be taught in schools, but
honestly, I would say a lot of it is, I don't want to say hereditary, but it's very much like product of your environment type of thing.
No, exactly.
It's
comes from generations, right? That we confuse, that exploit our love for certain individuals to kind of perpetrate those sorts of, damages to communities. And that's something that I don't think we've had the chance to, I could be wrong, to explore as a community, within the Filipino community. I feel like I grew up in a very, very, very critical household. And some people go throughout their lives within that environment not questioning it. They tend to take it very personal and think that those sorts of details are who they are. But the things that are pointed out, or at least what's put on a scale for value, are most likely rooted to some sort of colonial justification, whether it's colorism or productivity or even just phenotypical features, right? Things that you can't control. Yeah. You're either considered lower in the caste or even lesser than certain people within your family or just the community around you. But I think that's also the freedom of college, and why I say it's a double-edged sword. It's like, personally, I'm gone from my family. I could do whatever. But exactly. Stepping away from that, right? I can realize, they said that because, that's how they felt. That's how they were raised. What do I feel like? How do I feel about my skin color? How do I feel about how I look, how I see the world? And essentially, filmmaking is my expression of that. All of my observations pretty much creatively put onto a script, directed, towards actors, and having them kind of inhabit those things. I think it's very, I'd say it's fairly fulfilling for me. And also, one of the things too, is just and this is just a plus that is a given with, I guess, just who I am, but also, a lot of people are like this too, but film has a very, very rich history. Regardless of what I make, I wanted to honor Philippine history or Filipino-American history. All the goods and bads, all the, crazy stuff. I want to put people on, but also hey, it's not just me. As much as these feel very original, and to an extent, I created this from my personal experiences, it's probably derived from that cachet of film history.
Putting things in your own lens is what art is all about, and I totally respect you wanting to capture their experience. And when did you know that you wanted to be an artist and work in the field?
Ooh, that is a good question, because personally, I'll tie it back to the question. I suck with compliments. But the thing is because I grew up in a very critical household, I do well with critique. And so when I watched Parasite for the first time, I was like, yo, how is this Korean families? How do they parallel my own personal family? Especially with all the drama and also just the experiences I've had with my father especially. And so that brought me into investigating and also researching class, history, Filipino culture, and all of that connecting to the diaspora and also just being in America. And after all that research, Isang took 3 tries to finally lock in. But within the first try, I really wanted to make a movie that was both a rallying call and also to highlight, hey, this is where we came from, this is what we are now. Are we really going to stand by the stand? But I was like, damn, that's so straightforward, that's so didactic. Like, as much as I want people to get the message to, like, is this really possible? And so I watched one day on a beautiful night, I watched Nope by Jordan Peele. And that movie pretty much like, and also I think I watched Malcolm X within the same year, but Nope, I think I'll just use that example. I just remember sitting there at like complete awe at seeing the image of the decoy horse with the flag over its mouth just standing there. And I also was completely moved and also disgusted by that sequence of all those people in the jean jacket's stomach tube. And my brain pretty much connected, and I was just like, oh, these are the same messages that I've been trying to convey. They just use very creative imagery and lead up and like, yeah, like there's so many
storytelling
moving parts that goes into the storytelling. And I think that pretty much, yeah, just like lit that light bulb for me and was like, oh, I don't have to just scream at the audience message. I actually have to do the same thing with my verbal gymnastics. Like, hey, you think it's this thing, but then you also think it's this thing. But in reality, like, this is the thing, and we are living in it, essentially. Do I have more time for another example, or is that good? Yeah. You know, it's interesting. Malcolm X, especially as a figure, is definitely a person I look up to constantly, and also a film that I can continually study. The film that made me want to become a artist was Spike Lee's Bamboozled. Have I ever brought that up?
I don't think you've brought up Bamboozled yet, but you have brought up Spike Lee.
Okay. Bamboozled was a product, it goes back into the horseshoe theory, right? It was made in 2000s, very much of a product of its time, but also a very, very angry film that approaches all of the sins of American culture head on, but still coming out of it with a message that is universal and also very resonant with, especially being an artist that's going to create an image or try to shape a culture. And watching Filipino films throughout my life, I'm like, damn, we're not Jokoy. We're not Bruno Mars. We're not Olivia Rodrigo. Like, we are so many things. So I've kind of just like, I shiver at the thought of calling myself an artist, but like, I'm genuinely passionate to devote myself to, you know, like creatively depict our community. That'll allow us to look within ourselves and in turn try to shape the community moving forward. I don't think we've taken the time to do that since, you know, they're putting us to work. So
Exactly, dude. I mean, so much, you're either in the background or you're like Manny Pacquiao and you're like the biggest celebrity in the world. That's pretty much how it is. Okay, so we've talked about, you know, why you wanted to film in the first place. We talked about your connection, your personal connection to immigrant history, Filipino immigrant history, and the American immigrant experience, and how you like to create films that tie into the Filipino experience and the migration experience. So, with everything said and done, my last question is just, what do you have left in the tank right now? Like, what is coming up? Do we have anything to look forward to, and where can we find you?
yeah, so far I'm in pre-production for Lenora, which is probably going to be, fingers crossed, like probably hitting festivals, and also probably like I do want the film production club to have like access to my movies, because this is the main organization I've been kind of like collaborating with, working through, and I'm going to graduate this year, but I do want to leave a legacy of filmmakers that are willing to explore either the industry or their career or even their artistic voices. And I definitely, I don't know, you know, the question of like LA, New York, all that stuff, the big cities has been a constant for me. But personally, there is a lot of history and also just story that comes with Washington. I mean, I think there's so much Filipino organizing and also community and history that comes with Seattle, and also just like Bellingham to an extent. You know, the Whatcom community Filipino are, you know, people that I have been fairly distant with because of school, but I I think Bellingham is shaping up to be a place that I'm going to spend some time in.
What else do you have going on?
Moving forward, yeah, it's just like my project. I am going to help with Troy's film that's been in the air. What else? Oh, there is a movie that I acted in called
Really?
In Between Days. Yeah, the guy who made it, it's a feature length. The guy who made it was actually the leader of Film Club before me. He's a great friend of mine. I was very happy about my performance and also just like getting that role. Yeah, I mean like, yeah, I'm just moving forward. I definitely just want to probably organize more, but at the same time, like, put my stories on the screen. And, yeah, just try to tie in activism and also community organizing with art, I'd say.
And what platforms can I find you on?
Ooh, right now, oh dang, we didn't get to talk about my experimental films. I guess they're pretty much applied. Vimeo, that's pretty much the main one. YouTube, I think I have an account of the same name. They have the same films. Or Instagram, I'd say I'm fairly frequent on there. I'm not ashamed of like my, I guess, my digital footprint, I'd say. That's definitely something that I've been fairly intentional with and also very vocal about.
If you enjoyed the show, then I highly recommend the show notes. They have all the relevant links as well as a detailed description of what you listened to today. It also has a link to all of my social medias through my link tree. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you again in 2 weeks. Stay safe.